Hello, Fit Fam, and welcome to In Bed with the Fitness Industry. I'm Nathalie Lacombe, your coach and Cupid in the success of your career and your business in fitness. And welcome to already season 4 of this podcast. Thanks to you, the incredible listeners and fitness pros and wellness pros that listen to the phenomenal guest that generously share what you can do, what we are doing in order to have successful and sustainable careers in fitness. They will be sharing this season tricks to help you and reflections to help you be successful, whether you're working locally, nationally, or even internationally. We're taking the podcast a little bit on the road this year. A huge thank you to our partners in this season, HexFit, the leading software for fitness professionals to create programs, to track your client goals, to perform physical tests, essentially manage all coaching activities. They've got a brand new AI assistant inside HexFit. And couldn't we all use an assistant from time to time to be successful in our businesses? So it'll help speed up your program creation, your client messages, and the alerts that will be there for your clients or for you. HexFit has also generously given us a 40% discount for your first 3 months. Have a look at the show notes for the link or reach out to me directly. It'll be my pleasure to connect you with them as phenomenal partners in this season. Enjoy listening or watching to the podcast or the video, whichever one you're taking the pleasure of doing now, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Bonjour, Fit Fam. Welcome to this edition of In Bed with the Fitness Industry. I'm Nathalie Lacombe, your coach and Cupid in your career and in your business. And it's an absolute pleasure today to welcome Jonathan Ross. Bonjour. Thank you for joining us, Jonathan.
Hello, greetings, everyone.
Super nice to have you. For those of you who haven't yet had the pleasure of connecting with him, Jonathan was inspired by the 80, 100-ish pounds of his combined parents to create an award-winning fitness career that expanded into Brain Fitness and eventually the creation of Funtensity. We'll talk about a little bit all of that today. He's a former astronomer, and he used his studies to build now stellar bodies, gone from the bodies that were perhaps more in space now to the bodies that are grounded on Earth. And so thank you so much for joining us, Jonathan, and welcome.
Thank you. Excited to do this with you.
We shall get into the boudoir details first and foremost. So tell us about your sleepwear.
Well, my sleepwear is pretty much my underwear. That's it. I don't like to have a lot on. I like to get my coverage from what's on the bed itself.
Excellent. And in a world that I know there's a lot of, because you're a fitness educator and you promote and support a lot of fitness professionals and organizations. But in an ideal world, what time do you like to get to sleep and what time do you like to wake up?
Sleep sometime probably 10:30, 11, and then wake up around 7 in the morning. That's where my body's kind of settled into a natural kind of rhythm around when I don't need alarm clocks, which fortunately now I've engineered my life to need alarm clocks less often than I used to.
Nice. And so you get that as often as possible?
Pretty much, yeah, most times. I'm also a big believer, though, in not being too rigid about it. Little thing I kind of push back against the often recommendation is to be religious about the same sleep and wake time, only because having done a lot of international travel and I think it's good to prepare ourselves to be, it's almost like training your quote unquote muscles to be a
Ah,
little adaptive to less than ideal circumstances. So I think if we're too rigid, we become too precious and then we are unable to function when, say, something like daylight savings time comes along and we have a
yeah.
single hour change to the clock and everyone acts like the sky is falling. So I think it's a little bit, it's important to be a little bit respectful of our physiology in terms of what our body's telling us, but then not
Mhm.
not get too locked into the rigidity of feeling like it has to be an everyday absolute 100% rule.
I like certainly not getting stressed out about being too stressed about sleep. for
Absolutely.
example. So doing it in a way that's positive rather than creating more undue stress. I understand that. I appreciate you sharing that. Um, I had the pleasure of listening to one of your presentations recently, and one of the things that I found really interesting was that you highlighted data around chronic conditions that led fitness professionals, including myself, to kind of question how we see or who we categorize as being in quote unquote special populations, that in reality ain't that special statistically with some of the data that you highlighted, and is actually more common than I think many of us were led to believe when we're like, that's special versus what's not special in traditional quote unquote healthy adults again. Can you share some of that, and let us know why we should be paying attention to that perhaps no longer valid nomenclature of what's special and what's not special?
Absolutely. Well, special, I think, means, different from the norm, and it usually connotes a sense of being in the minority. And then if we look at the majority of people having one or more chronic medical conditions and the majority of people struggling to maintain a consistent pattern of physical activity, they're not the special population. Those of us that do are. But specific to the numbers
Mm,
about the 65 and up age group in 2018 worldwide became a larger age cohort than people age 5, which that's the first time that had ever happened in history. And it's estimated that by the year 2034, the number of people 65 and up will outnumber the number of people 18 and under. And that's never happened before. So that's estimated to happen by 2034. And then 95% of people 65 and up have one chronic disease. And I'm talking about non-communicable diseases. So, for example, I mean, I'm 53, I have old sports injuries, so I've got knee arthritis. So I'm in that category and I'm not even 65 yet. And
mm,
then 80% of people 65 and up have two or more chronic medical conditions. But if we look at it the other way, so the other side of the age spectrum, so to speak, the people between the ages of 20 and 30 now, about 54% report having one or more chronic medical conditions, typically things like MS or lupus or even arthritis. And so what's happening is we're seeing a larger number of people have something going on. They've got some issues, but we're also seeing a larger number of people pursue fitness. So this is my 26th year in the fitness industry.
mm,
And what I'm seeing is that when I started, it was people who wanted to get in shape for the wedding or bathing suit season, or yeah, there was some people who just knew they needed to make a lifestyle change. But then there would be people that would come to you with something going on. They would have some, osteoporosis, arthritis, or something they were dealing with while they were pursuing fitness. But what I've seen is in the 26 years I've been this now, it's more the norm than it is the exception. And because of COVID, I think with everybody really like population wide, having a new appreciation for how much having a healthy, robust body going into any illness is in your favor in terms of its outcome. I think that was a big aha moment for a lot of people. So many people understand that even if they got something going on, they can still pursue fitness, and finding a way to do that successfully is, I think, the future of the fitness industry, because we have this older population that is becoming a larger percentage of the population. They have probably the means and the motivation to pursue help from a fitness professional, but they're also probably going to appreciate what they get a little more because they understand the fragility of their health and the precariousness of maybe the future that they're looking at if they don't make some changes. And I think it's a huge opportunity for us as fitness professionals to start being able to kind of provide fitness instruction and coaching, yes, but to get comfortable doing so in the context of one or more chronic medical conditions.
interesting. I love that we're looking again that aspect of what's common or what's most common statistically versus what's the people that were there, and the concept of trainers and instructors being certified or qualified to work with seemingly healthy adults. First of all, seemingly versus what's a seemingly is something that I've been, thinking about really differently since I had the pleasure of listening to that presentation of yours in which you highlighted this. And then it's should we instead not make the assumption that they don't have something, but instead make the assumption that they do, and broaden our opportunities and our longevity and our success and our profitability in the industry with feeling really confident to be able to address that. And so with
Yeah.
that seeking of confidence, even for myself, I went on the website, I had a look at MedFit's opportunities, and I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that for somebody who's 51, for myself, I was very interested in like the concept of perimenopause and menopause, and is that where I'm going to go? Do you see that that's often the case with fitness professionals in that when they're looking into these conditions and looking to educate themselves, it tends to be influenced by their own life experience or where they are or what they might have in terms of conditions? Is that how we tend to choose what's next in terms of our specialization?
Sometimes I think there's two main ways, and that's certainly one of them. But I think it's more likely to be, well, not more likely, but I think there's two main pathways, like you discussed there. One is like you're personally affected by it yourself, or someone in your family, or someone you know really well. But then also it can just be, you can look at it as, well, if I look at my client base and or the demographics of the people I most often train in the club where I or studio where I am, then how do I best serve them? And if you know that, wow, okay, I just got certified 2 years ago, and everybody I'm working with, every time I'm looking at their health paperwork, I'm seeing osteoporosis, arthritis, or maybe diabetes or something like that. Well, then let me maybe start with those, because I mean that's back when there wasn't a lot of medical fitness education. Every time I had a new client that had something, I would go run off and try to find out as much as I could about that thing,
Mm.
and then try to figure out how to filter fitness through the contraindications and the recommendations of whatever medical condition that is. So there's certainly a more personal avenue, or like in the case of what you identified, menopause. Well, that's a big one because that's going to serve more of the population, because that's not even really a medical condition in terms of it being a disease. It
Yeah,
does
it's just a life process.
medical
Yeah.
effect. Yeah. But
Hmm.
so that, like for me, I just got really interested in brain fitness around 2009. So that's my area of expertise. And I did the Alzheimer's fitness and the brain health specialist course for MedFit because of that, because that was just my area of interest. I had one grandmother that had a little dementia, but it wasn't too bad. She died from something else first, but it was just an area of interest for me. My brain became self-aware and wanted to learn about itself. So it's either going to be something that's touched you personally, or something that you see will serve a large number of the people in your area or in your demographics, that would choose your best educational path forward.
Speaking of that educational path, and I'd love to know because you're somebody who, as you mentioned, are really passionate about learning, really passionate about education. Just before getting on air, you mentioned that there's some things that this month actually you're curious about learning more from. How do you decide the amount of time, money, that you allocate for yourself in learning and developing yourself and growing versus working in the industry? Like, what would you suggest to your peers that might be overwhelmed by how much there is to learn and choosing where they start and how much is it a percentage of their revenue? Is it a yearly budget that you put to that for your time and for your money?
Yeah. I won't say I was ever as precise as putting pen to paper and doing math on how much of my budget I was allocating to it. There was more of and I'm going to try to put this in terms of information or an answer that will serve a large number of people rather than just going with my personal approach. But what I think is helpful is even not looking at anything in terms of medical conditions, or zeroing in on what's going to help the 65 or 60 and up population, wherever you want to draw the line. If we understand that exercise is optional, like most people, they don't have to exercise. We'd like them to, and it's best if they do, but they don't need to get through their day. But what they need to do is move. Movement's not optional. And if we understand how to help people just move better, you'll do wonders for people. And so starting with posture and looking at mobility and all the way up through exercise and even into athletic performance, because those that higher number of older individuals that's occupying a larger percentage of the population, they're also entering masters swimming and running races in higher numbers than they ever have. They're playing pickleball in higher numbers than they ever have. So they're also wanting to maintain vitality and pursue physical activity. And when we understand, though, that they're going to probably be doing so with some pain and some things going on, and maybe longstanding musculoskeletal imbalances, and if we can help with posture and mobility and just better quality movement, they'll hurt less, they'll move better, they'll feel better in their bodies, and that will then sort of open up a wider range of activities that they can pursue, which we would hope would include exercise. But since everybody moves, I think if you get better at taking away people's non-pathological pain, you'll do wonders for yourself. And I remember maybe after the 5, 6 year mark in my career, when I just started getting a little very interested in that stuff about better movement first, posture and mobility, and just better function of the biomechanics in the body. I started getting insane amounts of word of mouth business that I wasn't even asking for, because you'd have someone that has a knee that hurts, and they've had it looked at. They've had an X-ray, MRI, done evaluations, and the doctor will say something like, "Well, they can't see any reason why your knee's hurting," and then they send them on their way. I'm like, "Well, that doesn't stop the knee from hurting, and it means the person just has non-pathological pain, which is typically a movement abnormality, which done long enough has created some discomfort and misalignment in a joint." And when you can take that away, boy, will people not shut up about you. So if you get good at
Mm.
movement, you can take away a little bit of the pain that people have as they go through their day-to-day lives when they do come to you for help. In terms of the specifics of how I go about implementing that, just to be very concise, I give people programs, and there's two components to the program. There's their workout program, and then there's also their daily movement and restoration program. Depending on the person, I'll put it in different contextual terms with the language that I use. So there's going to be something I'm going to want them to do every day, because it's just very simple, basic corrective exercises that might be posture and mobility focused. But then there's their exercise program. So there's two different components to it, and it helps them understand the stuff that's going to help them move better versus what's going to help them perform better when it's time to actually exercise. And so in terms of the spending of the money and the budgeting and allocating, I knew pretty early on, after getting initially certified, it was an entry level. It was more like a credential, because I figured out pretty quickly that you have people come to you and they've got, "Oh, this hurts, my ankle hurts, I got some ankle issues, shoulder issues, back issues." They might have a whole bunch of issues, even not just physical ones. And you have to deal with these things, and you kind of don't always feel equipped to do it, because we are taught to work with apparently healthy individuals. And what does that ever mean? Because a lot of people might look healthy, but they have some stuff going on. And I was just hungry for education. And what I found was that when I went ahead and spent that money, it always came back to me in terms of the type of quality I could deliver in my services, and then that would turn around in terms. It would come back to me in terms of word of mouth business, or at the time I was in a big club, so a lot of people would see me, and they would sometimes pick me from among the other trainers at the club. We had 20 or so on staff, and they would just see my demeanor even when I was working with clients. So that there's a lot of ways you can learn how to be a professional, and part of it is education. And I'll lastly say this: I would encourage anyone who's intimidated or scared of sort of wading into up-leveling their knowledge with anything relevant to medical fitness, don't be, because I can tell you that just because you're scared to hurt someone means you probably won't. And if you kind of think about what that means and let that settle in, if you think about the cavalier trainer who thinks they know everything about fitness and just is maybe a little bit haphazard and a little too bold with what they show someone, and they think that fitness and tough exercise will fix everything, they'll be more likely to hurt someone. The person who's scared that they don't know everything, so they can't do anything, will probably not hurt someone just because of that carefulness and that methodical baby step approach they might take to introducing movement and exercise to people. So I think that if you're that person, if you're the first type of person, the overly confident, arrogant, cavalier person, you're probably not listening to this anyway. And if you're the second type, just go ahead and start your learning process and just start using what you learn. That's the other tip I have: is don't wait until you
Right.
know everything, because you never will. And if you wait until you feel like you know everything, you're going to help no one, because they'll be
Yeah.
dead, or a whole decade will go by before you can help them.
And to your point, as you use what you learn, you'll grow your business, you'll grow your revenue, which will give you more opportunities to then reinvest that into continuing to build. So seeing it more as like a almost like a natural building of career, and that requires the opportunities to learn and grow, and educate yourself, I think is a nice way to do it. And everybody's pace of that is a little bit different. But I like what you're saying, in that as you grow that, automatically you open your eyes and people see you more to new opportunities, new clientele, and being able to continue to build the trust. And the trust is absolutely necessary to a sustainable or long career in our industry. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well said. That was a
I'm
good. Well,
oh, thank you. Nice. I pay attention. No, I'm kidding. I am somebody I have a degree in psychology, and then in exercise psychology and exercise science from there. So I'm a bit of an exercise psychology geek, which leads me to be, to a certain extent, a big fan of the Funtensity brand. Can you tell us about how you see fun, pleasure being key to longevity and perseverance in physical activity? So a bit of a shift to the other thing that you're passionate about, but it's something I think is really, really key for everyone to hear. So please tell us more about that brand.
absolutely. Well, my happy place when I was a kid was running around outside playing. I live in a place where there's all four seasons. So we had snow. I had, snowball fights, built snowmen, went sledding. Then in the summer, I'd be running through sprinklers, playing tag. And that really, it's bringing the spirit of that while you're being physical, and also even putting forth very physically demanding effort while in a spirit of playfulness and joy and connection with others, was really the driving force behind Funtensity. And one question I used to always ask people to get them turned on to the concept is, when's the last time you were working, you were having so much fun that you didn't realize how hard you were working until you stopped? So when you're caught up in play, whatever that means to you, if you think back to a time when you were a kid and you were caught up just playing tag or something, and then you kind of just running and running, trying not to be caught or trying to tag someone, and then you get to base and you stop and you go and you look down and you're sweating, and then you notice how heavy you're breathing, but you weren't focused on it. And that's really the whole idea, is to bring that into challenging exercise for adults. Because if there's a saying that, if you don't love it, you'll never be good enough to be great at it. And that's probably true of almost anything. But with exercise, we don't have to love it. We just have to get a crush on it. We can't hate it forever if we're going to stick with it. And
Love that.
go about, if people go about exercise with a sense of drudgery and a sense of, at best, ambivalence, but at worst, if it's an aversive experience, then you're actually creating a stress response physiologically, which will limit some of the benefits of it. And you're adding to your overall stress load. And it'll never stick, because it's always going to be a willpower game. And anything we're meant to do on a regular basis is never going to run on willpower. It has to run on emotion. So that was a big flip for me when I started studying the brain as a trained scientist, astronomy and all that. I was, very rational, but we're not rational people. We're not dominantly. We are primarily emotional people. And anyone that says they're not, they just haven't come to that reality yet, because they drive all of our decisions beneath the surface or on the surface. But even when it's beneath the surface, we may not recognize it, but it's nudging us towards the decisions that we make. And if we make exercise this awful experience, and it's not going to be good unless it sucks. Yes, it has to be challenging to create change. However, if we can bring people to a sense of connection and a sense of lightness of being, they will actually work harder, because they're not focused on that intensity. And when there's a spirit of friendly competition and play, you'll often find that your effort level rises and you work harder. And as a professional, you don't have to push as hard to get people to actually put forth more effort. They do it willingly. When you create an environment that is conducive to that, and they just want to, they actually create a desire for doing activities that will do them physical benefit.
Mm. I think it has, I mean, the one of the reasons, and I thank you for explaining that from the brain science perspective. I think one of the reasons that I'm especially attached to it is, like you said, you need to have effort to create change, but that's what the change of the people that are coming. And the people that are coming are 15% of the population. And all we've done since you and I have been in this industry is kind of like, fight for that same 15% of the population that actually works out in a structured setting, like the ones that we have in our gyms. Whereas everybody else, the change for them is exercise adherence, is not exercise performance, but sticking with it is actually the change we want to see. And when we want to do that, looking towards results has not helped us at all versus looking towards pleasure. So it's the question that I'm sure you get, I get, a lot of us get all the time, which is like, what's the best exercise? To which my answer has always been the one that you enjoy, which frustrates people, but I think still think is true because we keep coming up with trends and people think that they just haven't found the right one, when in reality, the right one is probably much more intuitive than answered by a quote unquote fitness professional. And so I like that we're having this conversation about what actually will help build a more active population versus what will provide people results, which I think are two different conversations. How do
Yeah.
you see that?
Well, can I highlight something you just said? I think is very important. I
Please.
there's that question you have for someone, and I've done the same thing. Ask someone, the best type of physical activity is the one you enjoy. And I've met with people who, sounds great when you and I are talking, and this is mostly a fitness professional audience, so we all get that. But there's clients of mine I've had to talk to who say, "Well, I don't enjoy anything," and I went,
Nothing. Yeah,
"Well,
fair.
you just haven't found it yet. That's
Yeah.
okay. Well, but." I don't want you to eat any food that's healthy and you hate it. I want you to eat food that's healthy and you enjoy it. I want you to pursue physical activity that you enjoy, but if you don't enjoy anything, you just haven't found it yet. No one naturally hates physical activity. There's no fish that are born hating water. If it sustains life and it provides vitality, we have to love it. We've probably learned to hate it. And there's varying degrees genetically of how much people enjoy physical activity, but no one is at zero biologically. So if you truly hate it, you've learned to hate it. If you don't love anything yet, you just haven't found what you like. And all it means is being open to trying new things more than once, because the first time you do something, it's not the real experience. You're just trying to survive it and figure it out. To try a new class, a new form of physical activity, ice skating or hiking or stand-up paddling, or just try something you haven't tried before, and or just go kick around a soccer ball or just play tag at the next family gathering. Just move again and just
Which
just
they don't think counts. They're like, oh, like, and you'll say, well, do you like walking? Well, yes. Well, that's physical activity. Well, no, that's just walking,
yes.
right? They don't like kicking around the ball or playing sports or a pickup bang of something. And they're like, yeah, but that's not working out. They don't think it counts.
Yeah, it's a self-limiting belief about anything that's not in a gym and isn't structured. And I'm counting sets and reps. And I'll tell you, when you free up your ability to think about what it is, and because your body doesn't care if your body's getting a physical challenge, and there's varying degrees of challenge. Yes, if you go for a faster paced walk, it's harder. But you can do interval walking. You can walk faster from a tree to a mailbox or something. If you're in a neighborhood, you can pick little spurts where you can increase your activity up over what you're used to now, and it doesn't have to be grueling. But certainly that's an educational opportunity that people like to compartmentalize everything. Where yes, this is exercise and nothing else counts. But no, that's an educational opportunity for us as professionals to get them to see how there's many movement opportunities around. I'm not a fan of the typical ones you hear, park farther from the store. I'm like, no, park close to the store, get in, get out as quickly as you can so you can get home and have time to exercise. Like I see it as, taking the long cut, which is the opposite of the shortcut. So for example, doing things the hard way on purpose, sometimes physically, try to see how few trips you can make carrying the groceries to the house where you can load up your arms and be okay with taking stairs, but not necessarily on purpose. You don't want to take the elevator and skip the elevator and take the stairs when you're going to something on the sixth floor because you'll be exhausted by the time you get there. Be sensible about it, but certainly if you're going to take a walk, take a tennis ball, bounce it with you, write numbers on it, count the number or add them up as you catch it. And it doesn't have to be the entire time you walk. Just play with your environment, walk around trees, balance on the curb, kick a stick or a rock like a kid would. Just explore and experiment and just be curious about the world, even as you just go for a walk. And it can be something that increases your enjoyment of it. There's something I teach people to do called walk like an alien, where you kind of pretend you're on Earth for the first time and you're just not understanding the plants and the flora and the fauna, examining everything, like that bird flying, and you just act like you've never seen a cardinal before or whatever it is, and you just appreciate the
Mm.
colors. And it sounds hokey, but it's not. It works. It engages you and it makes the activity seem a little more enjoyable. Or just put on some great
Versus trying to get it over with. Yeah.
Yeah, or just put
Yeah.
on some great tunes and like dance while you walk or dance around the house for 5 minutes. It's not as complicated as we sometimes make it. But the fitness industry sells products and services, so we don't always want it to be too simple on the one hand. Not overtly, I'm not saying it like we're trying to keep people only believing on purpose that a 90-minute exercise program is the only way to fitness. But I think we subconsciously have taught that to people because they think that unless I'm at the studio or the gym or I'm doing the workout, things don't count because we have this discrete world we've built, this modern life where the only time we move now is when we are exercising because we've engineered movement out of everyday life. So,
Mm, thank you. Thank
mhm.
you for sharing that. I really appreciate the insights from your perspective on that. So thank you for sharing that. As you look into, we're, at the beginning of 2024, as you look into the next year and you see what your colleagues are doing, what the education programs are out there, what your peers are looking at, what do you find inspiring? What makes you feel optimistic about where fitness and wellness is going?
I find it inspiring that more people than ever on the client side, on the public side, are pursuing help from fitness professionals. And I mean people that 20, 30 years ago would not be the kind of people that would hire a fitness professional because it'd be the person who wants to get really buff, build strength, build muscle, get in shape for the wedding, that kind of stuff. But now it's just people who are they just want to feel better, have more energy, and sometimes they don't even know what that means yet. And for us, it's an opportunity to breathe life into that for them, which means make it personal, make it meaningful. What do you like to do? Well, I don't know. Well, then figure it out. Let's keep experimenting. When are you happiest? To do the things you love with the people you love. That's really what fitness is a path to. And I think more people are coming to us because they're seeing the opportunity that fitness is a form of freedom. It gives you the freedom to do things in life. It gives you the freedom to have more range. You can go hike farther. You can see more. You can go down farther into the canyon. You can have a more adventurous life when you're living in a body that works and is capable. And I think more people than ever appreciate that, mostly because of COVID, because we got locked up and were restricted for so long. And now we see, okay, yeah. So even people that maybe didn't exercise before realize this is it. It's time for me. My whole life stopped for a while. So I've gotten some clarity on what matters, unlike any I've had in my life, and that there's more people that own fitness equipment than ever have and won't go to gyms, which is fine because there'll be enough people still going to gyms. But that means there's more people without an opportunity that have in-home equipment they never would have bought otherwise, except for being in lockdowns. And now they need help with how to use it most effectively for the rest of their life. And they also want to feel better and just move better. And I think more people than ever are appreciating the value of just feeling good in their bodies beyond being fit and having an aesthetic appearance of fitness, having a physical feeling of fitness that they appreciate as they go about the 24 hours of every day inside their own bodies. There's a little bit more value on that than I think that there ever has been. And part of that is just the population skewing older, like I talked about. But I think at every age group, there's a little bit more of a focus on that. And I think it presents a great opportunity for us as an industry to deliver information that helps people have a firm grasp of that and maintain it for the rest of their life. And I'll just say that for the industry, it's an important concept I teach in Funtensity is that you can't change someone's body in a single workout, but you can change their mind. And
Mm.
that the experience that you provide someone can change how they think and feel about exercise. And if they make today's workout or they miss today's workout, it won't change their body at all. They're going to wake up tomorrow mostly the same as they were today. But if we change how they think and feel about physical activity and exercise, they'll show up often enough to get the results that they're after.
Thank you. That tingled a bit. Thank you very much, Jonathan. I appreciate your generosity, your thoughtfulness in what you shared with us today. I wish you a phenomenal 2024. And if anybody wants to get in touch with him, all the information is in the show notes as well as on social media now. I invite you to connect with Jonathan and to see more of these opportunities and to keep having these conversations for us to keep impacting our communities at large. So thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And thank you, everyone, for giving us your attention. And I hope you just take one little nugget of something that you heard and use it. And so thank you, Natalie, for this forum and all you do for the industry as well.
It's my pleasure. Au plaisir. Au revoir.